Hey traders, it's the 23rd of March, 9:45 in Chicago. Good morning, everybody, and let's dive in. I want to spend a little bit of time today just talk about Bitcoin here and go through kind of what's going on in my mind and trying to make sense of this price action. There is periods in the market when not a lot of things are happening. You have consolidations, you have sell-offs, you have a trendless market, basically, something that just kind of goes sideways. And those are times when a trader's patience gets put to the test. And the lack of data here basically leaves room for the human mind to come up with all kind of scenarios that what the future can hold. And the Elliott wave principle here, it's trying to give us a sense, an ability to read the price action, to read what the market does. And through its tools and impulses and corrections, you are supposed to have a sense, to have a little bit of read on the market, to have a sense of where we are and kind of what's going on. And I think that's the beauty of this theory, of this principle, right? That it can allow you to establish a baseline for your approach. And things sometimes are easy, sometimes are complicated. And I think we are, in a complicated mess in here. But if you step back and you look at the market, what can you see in here? And let's go back from these March 2020 lows to last year in the spring, this massive rally that Bitcoin had. Now, you got to ask yourself, what move is this? And where this move finished? I think this is very important. Where this leg completed. And that's how I kind of analyze my approach in the market. This, you can see clearly, it started here and it ended right there. And then you've had some moves that, they just kind of went on their own way. But clearly, you have a big impulse move that started here and ended up there. Now, what is this move? Let's identify what this is. So it can be, in terms of impulses, because you are in a trending market, you're moving higher, right? It's not a corrective leg. It's not part of a correction. You cannot look at this as being an A, B, and then up in C. You're not going backwards, you're going forward, right? So it can only be three things. It can only be a wave 1, it can be a wave 3, or it can be a wave 5, okay? Now let's take each of them individually. What is this? So if it's a wave 1, that means that whatever happens from here on out, correctively, it's got to be a wave 2. If it's a wave 3, whatever happens from here on out correctively, it's got to be a wave 4. If it's a wave 5, then whatever happens from here on out, it's got to be a larger sell-off, right? Because if this wave, it's a wave 5 and it's pretty strong, then you got to sell off. You got to come lower. This move is done. It's a 5th wave. You got to come back all the way to maybe a 4th wave. If this is a 5th, that means that whatever happened before here was a 4th, right? And then this market needs to correct accordingly. Not like this, right? It's got to do something like that, okay, if that's a 5th wave. So let's just recap what I've said. So if this is a wave 1, that means that we're going to break higher, right? Because that's a 2 and then you're going to go up in 3. If this is a wave 3 and that's a 4, that means you're going to break higher. If it's a 5, you got to sell off and you're not selling off. And here is the thing, you've made a new high in here, okay? So if you've made a new high, how can you terminate a fifth wave in here if you made a new high back in here? All right? You got to take this and push it here for a fifth wave. I'm discussing a little bit the bearish scenario here. So if this was the move, then, and it started up into this, from these lows in here, and that's a fifth wave, then how do you count this move from this lows to this highs in 5 waves? When you have such a massive sell-off right there, that it's got nothing on anything that's happening back up into these levels, right? So let's say that you're considering that that's a wave 1 and that's a small wave 2. You got to go up in a 1, 2, 3, 4 and a fifth wave, a very small fifth wave, and then do a larger fourth wave, right? So that's the only way where you can assume that that's a fourth wave right here. And this was a small second, and that's a fifth wave, to allow for this market to bearishly move upwards. Now you see why that looks crooked and ugly? So if you're thinking about a bearish scenario, you got to have a reason for that. And that reason is that this has got to be a fourth wave for this to qualify as a fifth. Because if you move the fifth wave here, you don't have the count. You just don't have it. You can't have a fifth wave in here and then make a new high. Okay? So, maybe you're saying, well, Chris, listen, I think you're looking at this wrong. What if your wave 5 started back here? Okay? And that's your 1, and that's your 2, and that's your 3, and that's your 4, and that's your 5. And now you're selling off aggressively, right? Okay, so how do you do that? You would have to go in a 1, 2, and again, look at the size of the second wave, and look at the size of this fourth wave. This thing, it's just visually looking, this thing, it's a quarter, it's not maybe half of this decline back in here, which we know that's a very, very rare thing to happen in Elliott wave structures, where you have such a small fourth wave compared with such a large second wave in here. So then you hear the arguments. So again, it's very hard for me to consider that that's a fifth wave based on what I know the rules and the guidelines of Elliott wave structures are. So how can I assume that that's a fifth wave? Under both scenarios that I've showed you, starting a fifth wave from here or starting a fifth wave from here, things don't make a lot of sense. So going back to thinking that, this is that impulse, how else can you look at this thing? Maybe you're saying, fine, this fourth wave is not over. Well, if it's not over, you're still moving higher. Because if you're thinking this is a fourth wave at this degree, and 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, and you have a triangle, you're still moving higher, right? So now this whole thing here becomes a fourth wave. What makes this? It makes it a third, which is what I've said before. This is exactly how I started this discussion. This can only be a third, a 1, or a fifth. If it's a 1, it cannot start into these levels. It's got to start back here. Right? That's a 1. And sure, maybe the second wave is going to be larger and, it's going to come and sell off a little bit, right? But it's starting to have that proportion of a second wave in here. And, the discussion is, well, okay, how the second wave, because that's how you can still be bearish. But think about this. You already had the sell-off, so we established that you cannot put a wave 1 in here because of the way this ugly move look in here, and you cannot put a 5, so your wave 1 has to terminate there. So now you have a sell-off, you have a rise in here to new highs. Well, what is that? You can't have a zigzag with a rise to new highs. You can only have a flat or a triangle. So if it's a flat, then it's in 3 waves, and a 5-wave decline. If it's a 5-wave decline, then based on what you're having in here, that means that, look at the size of this thing compared with anything from below, from above here. There's nothing that compares to this size. So it's very hard to consider this a fourth wave of still a C wave in progress of a flat. 3, and then what? 1, 2, 3, big 4 and 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4 in here and a fifth wave? It's very hard for me to accept that. It just doesn't look right. But even if it is, that means that you're going to get a very short fifth wave back in here and you're still pushing up higher, right? Because that's what we're talking about, the difference between a bearish outlook and a bullish outlook in Bitcoin. So how else could this happen for it to be a second wave? Well, okay, 3 waves up in here, up in a flat, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I mean, how is that going to look? How is that going to look? You go 1, 2, sorry about that. I mean, wave 3, it's a big wave. Are you telling me that this move in here, 3, 3, 5, can still be a running flat, an expanded flat? It cannot be. It's very, very unlikely that that's the case. Are you going to get an ending diagonal in here where this wave 1, it's big, you get a 2, you get a very small 3, you get a 4, and then you get a fifth, and then you get some kind of a, let's say awkward looking ending diagonal like this? And you go in an A, B, and then some kind of a very ugly C wave like that. I mean, I guess it's possible, but that's just kind of mind bending at the moment, right? But that still tells you you're moving higher, even if that's completed. Maybe you're coming back below 35 for some reason, and then you're pushing back up higher. But that's still a bullish scenario, right? If it's a triangle, if this is a fourth, right? Because you cannot have triangle in second waves. If this is a third and that's a fourth, it's a triangle. You cannot come below these lows in here. So where are you going to go? You're still bullish. You just take more time. So tell me what is the scenario where this market crashes to $15,000 or $10,000 in a bearish move under what count? Under which count? And the one that it's the most probable for such a scenario is that this finished back here. That this move finished back there. And it's a much larger sequence, right? Either a wave 1 or, and then you get a big deep wave 2, either a wave, a wave 5. It probably started, if you think there's no way it started here, right? It's gotta start back here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, I just, it's very hard for me to see that. And let's jump over and take a look at the, at the larger counts in here. Just to kind of walk again through the scenarios, right? And just, you kind of go deeper in here. Wave 1 cycle, wave 2 cycle, wave 1, wave 2. All right, we covered this one. We know it's going higher based on this. This is the one that I just showed you before. That's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3. You got to get that fourth wave completion proportion with the second wave before still moving higher, right? And there's no way of talking right now, okay, this is a fifth and you're going to crash back lower. That's what I'm interested in right now. Is Bitcoin going to push back above 70,000 and make new highs or not? What's happening after that, it's a different discussion, right? So this is that third wave scenario. This is the one wave, the wave 1 scenario. Or that's a wave 1. Let me look at something else here. Let's see what I have in here. Same kind of a thing. That's a third. Okay, let's look at the yellow. Okay, you see? So that's the idea. Like wave 5, at which degree of trend? It's got to be at a larger degree of trend. Otherwise, you don't have the proper subdivisions here. So, fine. You take this fourth wave and you push it here. Okay? What difference does it make? Right? Let's say that you push it here. You go on a 1, 2, 3, 4. You still make one more in 5. Or you can push it in there and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're done up there. Right? So, and I've just kind of debated this. How do you count from here to there 5-wave moves? By looking at this very, very small second wave right there and saying that this move in here was a second wave, and then that's a fourth, and that's a fifth up to the top in there in what it looks like a 3-wave move. So, I'm sorry, but I just, you know, I would be very, very surprised, right, if this is a wave 5 with a larger degree of trend and you're crashing lower, based on, you know, the sequence of the waves, the size that we're getting in here, right? So the only thing is, if you want to still keep this as a 5th wave, is 1, 2, 3, triangle, 4 up and 5 again, and we're going back to the other scenario. So I'm doing some mind-bending exercises here to understand and to show you the reasoning why it's very hard for me to consider this a viable count with the big move lower. Let's see if I missed anything. Let's look at this move. Let me see. Do I have it in here, or maybe it's under black? Okay. Let's look at this one, right? Which is the same thing. The black, which I've talked about before, right? That wave 1 starts from here. And it's the same thing, a 1 or a 5, who cares? Because you're still going to get a big sell-off in here, right? So again, you got to do this nasty proportion here with the 4th and a 2 to assume that that's a wave 1 up and you're getting an ABC. So talk to me. Tell me, show me, prove me that you know what I'm saying in here, it doesn't make sense. Okay, based on what we know about the way, it's not necessarily me being bullish on the market. For any other factor, let's look at fundamentals and you know, stock market, whatever. But just in terms of the wave principle, just in terms of the counts in here, what am I missing into this, into my counting structure from, you know, from whatever lows you want, from these lows or from these lows pushing higher to new all-time highs? What am I missing that it's not, that is telling me that this move, it's not going to go from here to new highs next before you're getting a sell-off? Why are we getting a sell-off here? For what reason? And how does that fit in the overall structure of Bitcoin? How would you count it? I think I've kind of walked through all the possibilities. Maybe I'm missing something and I need to rethink it and relook at it. But believe me, it's not the first time I'm looking at these counts. So this is what I'm at. I'm just making a case, right? And I'm looking as a devil's advocate from the other side of the table, right? And try to put myself in another perspective and say, fine, you know, let's say this thing is going to sell lower. How? And how is it going to look in regards to everything else? Like, how else would you go in here, you know, and to still get proportion? Does this 4th wave, instead of terminating here, it terminates there? To still get a proportion in the 4th wave with a very small 5th wave? Come on. It doesn't work. So what are you putting this 4th wave for this to be a 5th? So I'll leave it at that. Just food for thought. Sorry, me rambling here about 20 minutes. You know, I just hope this is a, you know, a good exercise in kind of how I think on things and, you know, the reasons why I'm approaching things a certain way. And how I come to certain conclusions. So there's no confusion. All right. I'll leave it at that, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.